We want to thank the Budget Advocacy Network for leading this process up to the launching of this report. We really appreciate the commitment and the work you've done so far. You will agree with me that the Ministry of Finance has been working very closely with you in validating the outcome of the report and in completing the exercise. And I want to state here that the Ministry of Finance remains committed to working with you and all relevant stakeholders here in terms of inclusion and transparency, the participation and oversight of the various aspects relating to the budget process. Thank you for presenting the report. We have also examined the reports with regards to 3 thematic areas: the transparency, public participation, and lastly, budget oversight. We believe it is a good start, and I think we must acknowledge that progress has been made compared to where we were 2 years ago, and also compared to our other countries as presented by Mr. Abubakar. So I think my task here today is to react to some of the findings and the recommendations that have been made. With regards to transparency, I think this is the area where we've made, it's still insufficient, but it's an area where we've made marked progress. 39 2 years ago, over 100, and now we're at 45. So I think we've made good progress here. And one of the public financial management reforms that has led to the improvements in transparency is that the government has, this year we have produced the citizens budget, and I think this reflected in the scores that we had in terms of transparency. And I must say we remain committed to ensure that this report, the citizens budget is provided each year going forward. So this is it. I think it can be found on the Ministry of Finance's website. It will be found there. We will try and publish it as widely as possible. In terms of the recommendations, it states that we need to publish the pre-budget statement and media review of the budget in a timely manner. This is a recommendation that we note, and we ensure that these documents are published on time. I think the Budget Bureau will try to collaborate very closely with the macro-fiscal division and other divisions within the Ministry of Finance to ensure that these documents are published on time. We have noted this. Including the executive budget proposal data on the financial position of the government and data on macro-fiscal forecast. And this should include information in financial and non-financial assets held by the government, as well as estimates of the impact of different assumptions for inflation, real GDP growth, interest rates, etc. We must say these are data that are actually available within the Ministry of Finance. It's usually part of our budget documentation as part of the medium-term economic outlook. However, we acknowledge that more needs to be done, and we will try to work with the macro-fiscal division for these data to be produced in a more accessible manner by the public. Because we know within the ministry and the other agencies are aware that this data is available, and we have to ensure, we'll work very closely with the macro-fiscal division to ensure that the public has more access to this data. In terms of public participation, we know that we are the same score, but again, this is an area where compared to our other counterparts, other countries, we seem to have made good progress. Some of the recommendations here has been noted, including the fact that we start divisions to publish online reports that monitors budget deliverables for the ministries, departments, and agencies. This is a new sort of reform area also within the Ministry of Finance. We now have a dedicated department that monitors the commitments that are made in the budget. I think this is a good thing because in the past, so it's sort of, in a way, we have our own internal police that monitors what the leadership has committed to us on budget day. So the research division, they work closely with the budget bureau and all the MDAs to closely monitor the deliverables that the minister pronounces on budget day. This has been happening, but we work with the research department for them to produce this report so others can also benefit from the findings of these reports. So I believe this is an area that we can easily make progress going forward. In terms of actively engaging vulnerable groups, I think we have tried to make some efforts, especially with civil society, but we know that more needs to be done in terms of working with the underrepresented. I think this is where we would need the help of PAN and other civil society organizations to help us identify the groups that have been left out or groups that we can work more closely with in terms of their involvement in the budget process. Budget oversight, we want to acknowledge that also we've made some progress here, and I think in the Ministry of Finance, especially at the budget bureau level, this is one area we have tried as best as possible to get the public involved as much as possible. But we know that where we need to work harder is we've done well in terms of when we formulate the budget, but after the budget is formulated, the report says we need to do more in terms of implementation and reporting. So we definitely have made some progress. I think as a government, the awareness is there, the commitment is there to improve on transparency and public participation in the budget process. There's need for more collaboration, and you can see in the areas where we've collaborated with other institutions, we have made progress. Also, I think this is an area we want to continue to work on, collaborate more with various stakeholders to ensure we continue to improve on the scores. And as a country, it is in our interest to improve on our budget processes as it helps for us to manage the resources well. The people's resources, these are taxpayers' money. It helps us to attract more funding because the more you work on these areas, the more donors or external partners, the more they have confidence in our systems, the more they have confidence in our processes, and will be more willing to develop projects and policies that will help us move forward. Overall, the government do not have any choice but to be committed to this process because we believe it will help us to improve to achieve our development outcomes through the budget.
I also want to commend the organizers of the survey for the good work done. And as Audit Service Sierra Leone, we appreciate the work, and the results of the survey is also embraced. If I can go to the questions that were put to Audit Service regarding the recommendations, what is our take? I picked on two important recommendations relating to Audit Service Sierra Leone. The first one is for adequate funding to be given to Audit Service Sierra Leone. If the chairman asked me the question, why are we not hitting 100%? According to the report, we scored 72%, which is very good. To achieve 100% based on the survey, it requires many other factors. Funding is one of them. You all are aware that as Audit Service, we are not doing all the public sector auditing 100%. We outsource some of our audit work to private firms. And the reason being, one, because of staffing challenges. We cannot do all the work ourselves. Because of staffing, we do not have all the required number of personnel. And secondly, resources also is a challenge. We all know this is common in the public sector. And timeliness also. Most of our SOEs, their reports are submitted not later than 31st March. And also they have a timeline for us to complete the audit. So these are some of the factors. And also, so the requirement of, or the recommendation for adequate funding is welcome wholeheartedly. And also, there is also a recommendation that our budget should go directly to Parliament. I think that has to do with the law, but if it is done as audit service, we will also welcome that idea. The second recommendation about PSC making their report on the Auditor General's report public, I think that has to do with Parliament, but if it is done, we also welcome it. There is also a suggestion that audit service should involve CSOs in our performance audit work, especially in selecting MDAs to be audited. I believe we have been doing this because for performance audit, we have what we call area watch. Area watch is the initial point of the audit and performance audit, meaning that we are opening up our nets to the public to get entities or issues of national interest that is a burning issue that we can consider in our planning, and we have other assessment criteria to see whether this particular topic is auditable, because there are some topics that can be of public interest but they may not be auditable at a point in time. So, but we gather information from the public. If CSOs are suggesting that we involve them, you are welcome, and I believe we have been involving CSOs. But the challenging point, we cannot involve all the CSOs at the same time. Because you will agree with me, all of you as CSOs, you have your thematic areas of interest that you work. If we want to do an audit on agriculture, we cannot involve all the CSOs. We will try to identify CSOs that are focused on agricultural work, then we will involve them in that particular audit work. But I still accept your suggestion that we should continue to partner with stakeholders like the CSOs, even the journalists, etc., to do our work. To conclude, audit service as a state institution, we have our core values, and one of them is transparency, professionalism, due care, etc. We are open up to work with all stakeholders in the public interest. Even though our work is guided by international standards and by law, but we still welcome ideas from the public, and we have our IC officer who is present here, Mr. Martin Sambi. Mr. Martin Sambi is open up to the public to interact with you. You cannot get all of us at the same time, but whenever you want anything or discussion with officers of public audit service Sierra Leone, Mr. Martin Sambi is always available to create that link so that you work with us.
Firstly, I want to say thank you for the report to BAN and all the partners that actually came together to develop this. I think it's a very good start, like the previous speakers have said. This is something we can build on as a nation. We have also seen the report. We will look at it very closely. And of course, what we're going to say here are just initial reactions to the the specific indicators they are looking at. But firstly, I would like to ask a few questions. Number one is, I observed from the report that we have dropped significantly from 2015 performance, especially in the area of budget transparency. You see that in 2015 we were high up, and then we dropped in 2017. Then we started growing again marginally, up to the point we are in 2021. Probably this is something BAN would like to also explain to us to know why the reasons why we actually dropped. Because if we are not able to identify those reasons, now we are growing, but there is also a possibility for us at some point to have a drop. So we need to know so that we can also be consistent in what is happening. Then secondly, on the report we observed that the PBO indicators were not assessed. I think you indicated that on the last page. Yes, on the last page. Probably this is something you would like to also explain to us why we were not those indicators for independent fiscal institutions were not assessed. And thirdly, Parliament, of course, the report is indicating that there is need for us to do more in the aspect of oversight. I agree with you, there is need to do more, but I would also like to state in my own view that a lot is being done. I think where we are having a lot of challenges is getting those actually making it available to the public, or probably getting it communicated to those specific people that are in charge of those assessment stuff. Maybe that is really a lot of challenges. For example, we all know that oversight committees, most of them these days, they produce a report, and some of these reports, or most of them, are tabled in Parliament. But maybe we need to do more in the area of getting them accessible online to the public. That's why I said these are some of the things we will take into consideration. Also, when you look at the work of Parliament, at every stage of the national budget, we have a role to play. The budget planning stage, fiscal strategy statement, of course, is supposed to be looked at by Parliament. Budget implementation, apart from the fact that we are also active players in implementing the budget, but we also do oversight. And then after the reporting stage, when audit service completes their work, the product usually comes to Parliament also. So we are very much mindful. But on the aspect of oversight, some of the things that are actually happening, maybe which effect you may not see now. The establishment of the Parliamentary Budget Office, for example, for me, I think is a critical milestone. Because before this time, there was nobody to talk to MPs to say, look, these are alternative opinions to what the executive is saying on this critical issue. But now there is this PBO. In fact, some reports we are now producing, maybe in the next couple of months, the first draft will be out, address most of the concerns we are actually making here. There is one we call the Budget Performance, National Budget Performance Report, that the PBO is producing. And that report is going to capture the fiscal status of the state with respect to revenue generation and expenditure management at all levels of MDAs. We actually want to be seen, looked at the way the national funds are expended. When we had the last year appropriation process, and even before this time, some MDAs will come to say we are not receiving subventions on time. Sometimes we don't receive what Parliament approves. We know that as a state, we are running activity-based budget, and our budget is cash-based. So this budget performance report we are producing, we'll have to be looking at on a quarterly basis how much we have been able to raise as a state, and how those monies are expended, which ministries we have prioritized. Our work is just to do that report, and then we let the members of Parliament know. We know if they have those information available, they will be able to make more reasonable decisions. So that is on course. The other one we are also introducing, which we have started work on, we call it bill costing. We actually copied that model from Kenya. Bill Costin looks at, you want to introduce a new law. What is the effect of this law with respect to the economic effect, public financial management impact? You need to be aware. Otherwise, it is possible for you to develop laws that eventually you will not use. So I went to Kenya last year, and I was in their parliament, and the parliament wanted to develop a new institution to look at cashew nut production, a commission to set up to look at cashew nuts. And then the bill was brought to parliament. It was sent to the parliamentary budget office. They looked at it, they said, we already have an institution that is looking at palm oil production, which is an agricultural establishment. Why don't we look at their act, just review that act and then give them the mandate to also look at cashew nuts, rather than actually establishing a new institution that you would have to pay more to set up, you would have to have a board to be paying, you will have to have new set of staff, you will have to be giving administrative expenditure. And then they recommend to members of parliament, and parliament looked at it, they realized it was correct, and it was agreed. So these are the kind of things we actually also want to be doing. We are starting in costing, we've started negotiation on that. We believe if all of those things are actually put together, they will actually robustly help in our oversight activities. I strongly believe. Before I actually conclude, I would also like to recommend a few things. Like the report is suggesting that there is need to reform certain aspects of our laws. I also agree with that, because even on the PIFA assessment, you remember, I think myself and Abubakar, we have discussed that over and again. We have some laws. What we are doing is in conformity with our laws. But the way PIFA is looking at certain situations, to them, they still believe there is more to do. And we will be thinking we are complying with the laws, but that militate against us when it comes to ranking. So the same thing I see that is also affecting our ranking in some areas. For example, the audit of the national account. State institutions have up to 31st of March as per PFM regulation to have their account ready and submitted to audit service review. Audit service has from the 1st of April to December to get it audited, about 9 months, correct, sir? And then get it submitted, which means if they submit their report by December to Parliament, it is possible that Parliament may probably not be able to complete looking at that report until it rolls over to the other year. Ordinarily, somebody that is an outsider that doesn't understand our laws will look at it that why this kind of delay? Is it that Parliament doesn't want to comply? Is it that they're just trying to not to look at? So maybe these are some of the things we need to look at as a state, and then we see what improvement we can do in those areas. And then the other one is another recommendation, which I think will work well, is more collaborative effort among state institutions. Now, PBO, for example, we don't do primary research mostly. Our research at secondary. We work with Statistics Sierra Leone, Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Sierra Leone, NRA. So initially, when I took over as a director and we started doing some brief for parliamentarians, we would ask those state institutions for information, and sometimes we are having challenges to get certain information. But then consistently we have to continue the engagement. Now we see that there is a clear understanding, they understand the nature of our work. In fact, there was a time I went to Ministry of Finance and somebody was saying to me, we have a budget office here, budget bureau. Why do Parliament need another budget office? It was, a genuine question, because by the name itself, you just think we are just looking at parliamentary budgets. So I had to explain to that person to say, no, we are not what you think the name is actually presenting. This is the work we do. And then they understood and we started with continued collaboration. So I have a strong feeling that other state institutions, including the Audit Service Sierra Leone, we need to be having that kind of collaboration. At PBO also, we are not looking at only state institutions, but we are also even looking at how we can collaborate with civil society on the aspect of improving accountability and good governance. So I think a lot is happening from parliamentary perspective, but where the challenge is how you can actually do the presentation for them to be qualified for assessment. So once again, I thank you so much, Ban, and I thank all your partners for putting this together.